Philosophy should be scientific in its precision to quantify not only the human condition, but all sentient life. That is the goal. So many fail, myself included. To fight for ethics, it's almost essential to become obsessed in a personal manner. We obscure the truth with our desire for immediate appeal in the moment, placating through passion, becoming riled up, and all the beautiful therein typically runs amok in the details. And the perfect technical aphoristic argument is not read or heard. That argument, I believe, exists within us. We just have to suck up our internal abnegations and proclivities to fuck up the message, stick with facts and logic and the truth. The destination of truth is through 1. Observance, 2. Deduction through observance, and 3. Inference through deduction. This always equals a pattern. Logic is finite and the universe is non-reasonable intrinsically. Never make the mistake to assume reality means rationality. Plus, 4. Analysis of facts to draw conclusions, synopsis forming, endgame deduction and extrapolation. Have you ever thought about the beginning of everything? The old cliches speak about why does everything exist. Well, I myself made a fatal flaw in assessing this way back. I went further than these people and said, a void remains a void because a void is a void, which is utterly logical, but doomed to misunderstanding of the world. Genesis is non-intrinsically reasonable. The universe will or will not happen for no reason, because no prior factor will or will not prevent it. So yes, unless infinity can be proven self-existent, things must always exist always, properties can be named. In a finite cosmos, although definitively irrational, is and equals ultimately independent from observation, layman's term for real. Realness, quote-unquote, is quantified through observation, deduction through observation, and inference through deduction. Final analysis of facts, drawing of conclusions, synopsis forming, is the end result of hard technical scientific research. Did you know that the scientific method we have today arose from what people call the pestilence, or Black Plague as some vaguely know it? It came about because religion failed so colossally to bring answers. People thought disease was wrought from a corruption in the air, consequentially because of astrological phenomenon during the time. Following wretched outcomes, people lost faith and had to begin thinking more logically to find the truth. Logic equals deduction and inference based on consciousness. Awareness, sentience equals sensory input module devices, brain feedback loops. And evidence, facts, truths via the deduction of empirical examination and analysis equals objectivity, acknowledgement of wholes, independences of observation equals valid. Consciousness is dependent on brains, and thus begins scientific research on what I call wholes. Replacement word for things equals logically deductible to nothingness through an assessment of the origin of everything, but ultimately independent of observation. Just because I stop believing it doesn't mean it's not there. My goal, to provide information, so much so that the truth becomes inescapable to awareness, omnipresent through thought nodes, nomenclature, sucks the air from rooms, figuratively speaking, as to make any other means of sustenance, logical normalization of fleeing impossible, that people will have to deal with, accept or reject these facts, and thus can begin a great quietus, resolution, reward for those piteously withstanding. I prefer to stand by a philosophy of no harm as an ideal, though, since in living life our actions necessitating harm through fighting to be alive, we must take part in an unavoidable bloodbath. We can obsess and minimize all details of the ugly picture, but the whole remains. Activism is an ought and not just suggestive. Returning and waking up here again, through various forms of flesh with similar brain constructs to clean messes we did not create and to impose on ourselves a perspective so daunting that no other animal hitherto has dealt with. It is a long, dark, and ugly road to deeper understanding, filled with loneliness and uncanny moonlit twilight, desperation, despondency, hopelessness, unfulfilled longings for a better future, potentially, an erasure of the past and all the marks and scars of wasted capability. I feel at a loss of words to describe the horror, unsound within their aching eyes, minds, and hearts, to go all the way and be at peace again for one pathetic moment in an otherwise immeasurable time of ancient ages unfolded much ago. The immense scaffolding writhing from our DNA ancestors, their Herculean monumental bed flooring, rich of suffering, their backs turned, spines laid out piece by piece to make way for the king of the hill, our axi-generational legions of doom. What shame have we to bear? What agony have we to perceive forthcoming? Doom and doom non-bequeathed. Over-All-Harm-Reductionism. Efficient, optimal mitigation of the total amount of harm accrued through one's journey here, with aims to ripen the earth, unquote, not in offspring, but in the logical imperative of alleviation and prevention of affliction, birth, and pain, wherever affliction and pain equals affliction and pain, regardless of any who or what manifests experience. In a very literal sense, if not in absolute fling mode, our destinations navigate all action to the illusory prize of the lesser panic and agitation, also known as, although crudely put, pleasure, unquote. Fear is the prime example of reflexive movement enforcement, compulsion, that which thrusts us into the unknown in a stake for propelling, preserving ourselves into the future. In these two horrible dens, our future fortune vanishes, and erupts religion, socially approved thought dogma, as homages of ritualistic behaviors. Life has been imbued with our words and now gestures, the seemingly unquestionable edict that for the sake of it, in and of itself, if not just homo sapiens, equal the source of all value, our offspring. The words value and truth are akin to oracles, namesake calling of entity-like descriptions of things themselves or kernels, bastardizing any attempt of authentic representation of which a person should be able to clearly point to. Let me explain. In the case of human understanding, it has been said value is inseparable from experience, and equals real as an event. Without much thought, I can deduce that anything isolated to its own quadrant of non-observance are given labels which are no more loudly defined as their counterpart are unnecessary. The statement values in an experience can be no different than saying suffering equals suffering. I do not mean to claim this as a rebuttal of any means, just a rephrasing and clarification of technical importance. The new statement goes very much like the old argument that describes value, negativity, as repulsive. Instead of just negative, repulsion defines the natural state of fleeing from our decaying bodies as a result stillness would allow. Since no one does pain for the sake of pain ever, our prerogative becomes to end the cycle of coming into existence, reducing the net deficit of experience, wherever feasible. Since our innate goals of alleviating pain in the world and reproducing are incompatible with the necessary understanding of no true accomplishment in any chase game of addiction, hunger, desire, then we must accept these conclusions. Understanding truth comes through an ultimate assessment of independence of observation, sometimes with the exception of certain non-deductible or tautological statements, such as feeling equals feeling or void equals void. Logic is non-intrinsic to the universe, meaning Genesis obeys no laws and imposes its own. We can deduce and infer that consciousness is dependent on objects, or as I call them, wholes, by the fact that we are finite in knowledge, the world changes and does not change, on our belief of it and equals bound to the body. Logic uses deduction and inference to validate premises. Premises are founded through sensory data with thorough analysis. If one is not to use logic, all linear conversation ends and there is no argument to be had. To escape the resulting uncertainty system of feedback loops of proclamation and intuition-based judgments, one must base their belief in substantial empirical formulas. I choose to side with reasoning, though wanting to avoid pain is something I know without having to assess and compile a quantitative theorem. I think the fact of consciousness is the only bit of information that equals self-evident to the brain. And since this content is entire, We should take the situation seriously. We cannot escape the context. Logic works, and as a scheming engine, we will use it to get what we want. So, since feeling equals feeling, wherever active brain equals active brain, same equals same, let's work together for the benefit and cessation of the sun. So what is our capacity? Since there are humans like myself and others who acknowledge and concur our desires for purely self-centered ends, that brings at least some statistical evidence that humans are capable of more than the violent alpha dog king of the hill-like competition of our evolutionary origins. What do you think equals our requirement for a composition? Some basic things I think would start with exposure to knowledge, since without information no deduction can begin. Logical thinking, since incompetent and/or insane minds are unstable and erratic. If you have truth and cannot think logically, then that truth will or will not be useful to that person, or productive even. Awareness of consciousness as source of all harm, fundamental axioms or premises accepted for conclusions. Prerequisite understanding of evolution and biology, DNA structure complex, replication for the sake of replication, and disbelief in God. They're not totally necessary for human extinction. Self and intellectual honesty, and our personal familiarity with tragedy. We are already fucked by being begotten, so all attempts at our own health and state of being quality adjustment are superficial in comparison to the grotesque ruins in the universe has fortuitously erected. We must counter our victories in lives averted and ended non-gratuitously, without collateral damage of the potential for good destroyed, the most. Priority being the former. We are not here to kill and raise hell, but to promote the deepest peace and quiet wherever feasible, an utterly empty, hopefully uninhabitable world. There are aliens, that simply means the job is much more laborious than previously conceived. It should be noted that even if you believe we are not alone, any movement in the positive direction is still relatively, comparatively positive. Meaning, any harm negated is still harm negated and remains the ultimate, ubiquitous agenda wherever sentience equals sentience, capacity for pain equals capacity for pain. I want to re-clarify the following statements from emotional guru. Selfishness is not, in and of itself, the harm of the individual. The harm lies in the very mechanism of motivation, consciousness. Furthermore, will to ignorance, malevolence, sadism, mysticism are the evils, quote-unquote, to human intellect. In an ultimate sense, we consume, create waste, so no one will ever equal self-justified in living. Though, if one could live forever without forcing new lives here, that wouldn't be so terrible for the rest of us. I do want to say that it is not necessary truth that we cannot do good, so that our community is better off for us having been born. That is conditional, though, to our circumstance of cleaning messes and having mess to clean in the first place. We are imperfect, and as animals, we have to make logic and truth more personal, not just familiar, to implement them as useful tools. So, understanding logic isn't necessarily enough. We have to be honest with ourselves and make it more meaningful in our lives some other way, by integrating it. Understanding logic as it's more than just some abstract formula. It applies to our lives. As for having fun, so long as it is not the primary agenda, there is no sin feeling that you feel. It is important, since we are already alive, to stay grounded so that we do not go insane. That being said, everyone sucks. there should be no bias. Indifference would be hard to achieve since there is nothing to be indifferent about from a broad outlook on suffering. Many horrible experiences are happening now that would make the strongest, most profound accomplishments look trivial, by being negative for the sake of it. My heart would tell me to hate myself too, but really that is a waste of energy. You should be passionately furious at everything since any one moment is not good enough to make up for the terror on planet Earth. There is no time for fun. Logic demands sainthood, and the only difference between us and the other animals is our ability to curb immediate instinctual desires through psychological conditioning towards pride and integrity. Whatever makes you the most productive, no matter how inconvenient, even if it makes your life seemingly insanely hellish, should be done. That is the horror of being alive. Experience occurs simultaneous to experience. Simultaneous to your experience, many other experiences occur. Different locations and separate sensory processing to individual environments and bodies, though the fact of feeling remains. Juxtapose your moment with another moment and begin piling up the experience. What will that look like? A bit unnerving, frightening, a cacophony, yapping, screaming, fighting, buzz, buzz, buzz. The noise never quite yet put to sleep. If other animals had a voice and could express their desires, would you listen more easily? Definitely true that a wilderness snuffs out much intelligent thought and elevates reaction and urge, impulse and compulsion, though the fact of feeling remains. What do you think? Would a less intelligent human being be okay to torture or consume just because they are less intelligent? It seems most fear and worry stems from our cognition that there is consciousness that cannot be seen in our apparent context of the world, but feel so compelled to assume it anyways, as likewise our own sensations cannot be dissected visibly beyond the direct experience. Do away with the self. Do away with preconceptions and apparentness, and be reassured that this moment now would be magnificent if that was all. All my dread quells in recognition of others, to feel like this feeling was the only feeling would relieve all grating from my frontal lobe. This would also perhaps open the doors to even stranger things. Solipsis seems to take for granted the self and inference of apparent reality through tools of science, or at least take for granted the self. Over-All-Harm-Reductionism is a very good term in my opinion because it lacks any misunderstanding of violent, sinister, callous, crude, gratuitous, or cruel intent or hypothetical, non-tangible situations, red button, and all life switch, what if conjecture, and is more focused on the immediate what can I do circumstance. My definition for this branch would be again, optimal elimination and alleviation of overall sentient disturbance, pain, in the world. There is a quick, total, and painless way feasible, logically, efficient, ethically. This is the ultimate conclusion. Reducing, mitigating damage, overall harm, blood footprint, and/or producing an optimum best you can within individual capacity, positive net outcome in the world through one's own efforts and achievements. Preventing birth is paramount in all of the pragmatic efforts of human control in the harm impact statement. once begotten, if not stillborn or aborted or shortly thereafter expired, all focuses to relieve pain are temporary remedies towards the totality of all living creatures on earth, not elsewhere, akin to band-aid reduction. That's what I meant. Why have we been brought here? Where did all this come from? Who thought it was a good idea? These are the questions I think must be answered, for there is no consent in entering life. This is a formal complaint to the human race. Please stop reproducing and end the rest of sentience, i.e., animal kingdom and nature. Thoroughly annihilate. Return the eternal void-like peace and silence of the lifeless universe, where there is no screaming and torture, and cries for help go unrequited. We, humans, other animals, or aliens, if there are any, are not nearly special enough to have earned the right to harm another feeling creature. Not one iota, pinch, enrolling the knowing uncertainty, dice of procreation, inevitable destruction, from which immense challenge, miseries wrought, frightening elements, mental and emotional torments, must be endured for naught. Yes, it is a harm non-trivial to have kids. Consciousness is the source of all badness, and we are all better to fuck right off the planet into space and interstellar debris. Though since we do exist and there is a mess to clean, we should not kill ourselves prematurely, passing the burden to future generations. I, those who would be just like me if not only similar, do not want to wake up here again. So please wake up, think and listen to what we are saying. Infinity does not equal infinite repetition. Infinity can equals recurrence and variety, but not necessarily the redundancy or difference. What is my point? Say someone you, me, or them achieves complete realization and total obliteration, who sets the game board of the universe, assuming the sun with holes, and we start with a clean slate, non-filling nothingness and no holes. What do you think equals the consequence? What do you think equals the consequence thereafter? Think originality, genesis, / equivalent to first holes, since unbound by prior limitations of causal chains, equals non-recurring, but not truly. Do you know this trick of language? Beginning with a clean slate equals uniqueness only for that subsequent progeny, if any. So the absolute truth of all originations equating to their own differences absolutely equals non-guaranteed. True randomness equals non-guaranteed outcome. Guaranteed. If you have any counter proposals on these subjects, particularly this one or others, please let me know. Will we, equivalent to feeling creatures, wake up on another Earth in dread once more? If so, a more natural trend of progressive and perpetual deletion of sentience would be more so effective. Heat death, black holes, same inevitable transpiration of consciousness? I hope not. I hope not. I hope fucking not. I want the end to equal the end. I want the world to equal no more. I want the noise, disease, and suffering equal silence. Superseding purpose and mitigation and elimination will always equal logical and virtuous, where the tragedy and pain equals tragedy and pain. No reason to happen and no reason the wholes cannot happen, for equal no reason, precedent, or necessarily in terms of wholes outside the bound of cause and effect, like wholes, ever subsequent, equals variant answer. Wholes equal unpredictable in their origin equals ultimate unknown. We have not hitherto perceived the first whole reliably because of insufficient information / equivalent to non-referable source. Beginnings and ends equal always definite. Generation of wholes equal non-guaranteed, let alone repetition and or similar varieties of genesis. For no reason equals based / equivalent to antecedent. Robotic time. I think memes work and people don't necessarily need to understand deep axioms, but it is important. I've seen some people deface arguments on face value without delving any further. Some people need to be tutored, apparently, that feelings, badness, experience, and consciousness are significant in and of themselves, or the source for all significance or anything related to a thing and can be called significant, not who is experiencing them that is important. All I have to do is say it. Stop. This brain synthesizes experience, and all action therefrom ought to be more carefully considered, not just from this particular individual feeler, but from like-brained vertebrates as well. Proclamation of consciousness should give moment for pause, since you, the observer, cannot dissect your own observance. I mean to say, sensation hitherto has not been examined or proved to be yet to carry qualia intrinsic as any other known quantum-related substance revealed to us. Therefore, the ethical prerogative of should, agenda, necessity, or goal, ultimatum, necessarily follows that we shouldn't assume position of soul omnipotence, feeling. So even though the universe, we're relevant to the universe is irrelevant to us since we have a context of feeling. The universe being indifferent to us is irrelevant because we cannot escape this conscious context. So we should take it seriously. If I want to assert an abstract qualia, such as beauty equals independent of human observance or contrivance, evidence must equal presented to reform the subject equal to fact. If I want to assert an object equals valuable independent of the capacity to feel, value therefore has to equal observable beyond direct experience that can equal scientifically verifiable in a laboratory type environment. Life remains the only verifiable source of known entities that equal to carry brains, nerves, and neural fiber networks, neurons. And there remains no reason to believe DNA has originated anywhere else in the known cosmos and cannot ecologically extrapolate from one event how this happens. In all the billions of years life has evolved on planet Earth, there has been no second DNA abiogenesis. Just consider that. Humans therefore should focus their efforts on alleviating the profane horrors here rather than obsess compulsively over alien hypotheticals. There's no reason to assume aliens are aliens, since we only have evidence of one event. Conscious experience, welfare states, equals the capacity for affliction and alleviation, equals conscious experience, welfare states. Sameness equals sameness. Difference equals juxtaposition between feeling states equal to pain, pleasure, deprivation, and reward. Non-feeling objects equal different than a cow, pig, or cat, for example, that can feel manifest experience. Feeling is different. There are many differing gradations of feeling, those being deferred by harsh variance, should equals noted by obvious subtle to oblivious awareness levels. However, I am arguing many feelings fall within two categories, those being affliction and alleviation. Objects are not the same as feeling, although we should not be aware of objects without feeling. Things are superliminal, that is above conscious, beyond consciousness, independent of observation, as inferred through deduction. What you call it is irrelevant. A lie, deception, no thing, nothingness, your experience remains. You can deny that, I can eject you from the game. Nothingness implies nothingness, feeling is simply feeling. Feeling is illogical to deny, and non-feeling is incomprehensible, though feeling can be defined as just feeling. However, in direct experience, we can describe accurately the function of sensation through deductive reasoning. For example, someone shakes with a smile on their face just before they are about to eat. You might guess and say they are quite hungry and are excited. We know this with little doubt simply because experience. we can relate to. Not, and through association, so might well learn through association too. Feeling is nothingness, but it's also not non-feeling. It's something that cannot be described. It doesn't need to be, since you can taste it. Non-feeling is incomprehensible to experience. Non-feeling nothingness is irrelevant. Feeling does not necessarily imply truth, inference, scientific method, objectivity, independences, and observance, though can at least be understood intuitively. We don't need to necessarily define experience to know what it is, but we can define the function of experience. Nothingness, too, can at least be logically understood through deductive reasoning. Acknowledging consciousness is correct, good, and it should be done to take this perception business with heavy consideration. The context of consciousness has you bound. Once you are dead, even the conception of self ceases. These facts alone obligates one to be aware of life on earth. For you are people who will or not be just like you and me, not just similar. We will wake up here again, figuratively speaking. The same story will repeat, though crudely, though not meaninglessly. A lie without truth equals oxymoron. There is no such thing as falsity by itself. There is a truth to be discovered. A lie is no longer a lie, it cannot be escaped. That is to say, if truth does not equal truth, a lie can no longer remain either. The sampling device is a sense organ that interprets apparent reality through the manifestation of consciousness. There is one neuroscientist I know that says our brain is a prediction model, so it doesn't literally see what's there, it simply gives us its best guess of what's there. Consciousness is a deception, a synthesized projection, a trick that works so well as if it were not a trick. We all have the same goal, and that is to avoid pain and be comfortable in an ultimate, if not immediate, reactionary sense. We will demonstrate that if you are conscious. Pain for the sake of pain does not happen, ever. Pain for the sake of pain is an oxymoronic statement because we're designed to do things out of desire, which directly indicates fulfillment and relief. Pain equals pain necessarily because of inherent compulsion, raw nerve twitch reactions. Urban programs. Fundamentally. There are only so many ways to torture someone or yourself, so many ways to feel pain and repulsive. The duration of the punishment is then required for the hell thought experiment. There is no notion of accomplishment, pride, or other feeling of reward or relief. There is no desire to push or chase. The notion of accomplishment through the mechanism of pride is enough to push through pain perpetually. Desire is proportionate to perceived reward, but this thought experiment works only because it would be forced under fantasy circumstance. To suffer for eternity in self-pity for those who despise regret and remorse equals less than battling sameness through preservation, qualia, sense of self, under non-reaction to pain through stillness. The sensation of being saved from dying or coming close to death, or inflicting pain deliberately, and then releasing it can produce a greater reward through endogenous or endorphin-like responses from the body's metabolism or adrenaline features. Exsanguination, asphyxiation, and burning in various amounts to produce an intoxication of sensory input. If I believed there was a point, my brain would stimulate. In terms of emotions like unworthiness, worthlessness, and guilt, inflicting pain as punishment would and or could be desired to relieve the psychic turmoil, such as a sense of impurity or grossness associated with certain foods or sexual behaviors will or will not trigger a victim into ritualistic responses, or known as compulsions, such as overwashing, cleaning, starving, working out, etc. These are just examples, but I believe should demonstrate pain is never done for the sake of it. The point here is the supposed goods are built out of the bads and not actually good, to fill a hole up. a hole must already be dug. For example, to go without water, food, shelter, fornication, money, friends, and their companions for varying lengths of time will typically increase satisfaction when the subject finally divulges. I do not think this is always the case. An individual will not stay addicted to whatever they were chasing before fasting and can end up more and or less depressed or content than they were to start with. When we have something to look forward to, we are much more inclined to endure the bitterness of not having. Consciousness equals source of badness because of the intrinsic harassment utilized by evolution, an enforcement edging survival and reproduction for the sake of it, simply because that's what DNA does. There's only badness in the belief in badness. That is a condition of good. Without feeling or unless in a pristine utopian state, there's simply no harm, zero, or neutral. If I want to give the benefit of believing in your theory that there are absolute goods, not reliant on bads, then I would have to look at our current situation to see if the notion even makes sense and as a hypothetical. I think of bad as repulsive, so if I want to imagine good, I would think of the reversal, attractive. So then, what is drawing force, aside from deprivation and reward mechanisms? In our current context, I would say that no good can be even invented as a hypothetical. There's just no room for it in the current system. To argue for life as a non-harm, I think you must argue or deny harm to begin with. Imagine you were given 1,000 years ecstasy, then having to come down from that elation. What do you think your reaction would be, especially knowing you never experienced anything like it again? I think a lot of people would look at that and be shocked at how crude our base state really is, unless you refuse to look. That would be service to ignorance. To push through badness for utopia is less effective than simply ending badness. That being said, if you could create people who are immortal and could just live forever without bothering anyone else, I wouldn't have a problem with that personally. What do you think of logic? What is a question? Can we question a question? Or invalidate what validates? Is validation intrinsic or inferred through examination of facts? What are facts without validation? We can posit, summit, or experience, introduce what we have arrived at on solid ground through our conclusions. But where did our thought process come from? Experience essentially dictates all base premises for logic. Pain and pleasure are the paramount cinders in our context that edicts flow forth of. Thou shalt not remain still, you will die, says fear and instinct. Thou shalt get food and water and shelter and seek a companion. Fear, desire, under instinct. This is the most insulting thing about life. We are expected to move just to survive and live a basic life. Who on earth said I wanted to move and did not become harassed incessantly until folding or extirpation, so basically until we give in to pressure. Who thought that was good? Nature has no brain, so basically designed a system without thinking about it incrementally. Now I move on to my second point. Why isn't this just as valid as complaining about being robbed or being tortured? Because it's a notion in heads of accomplishment that life must be here, and nature an obsession for the sake of it. In my argument, for nothing. Since we're already here, it's easier to be biased about your existence. Is logic cyclical? No. Well, to be more explicit, logic needs precursors to draw any pointers, and sometimes consciousness is all you need to be informed of profane atrocity coming in and out, and forthwith, of the world we are currently reside and inhabit. So logic is composed of more than just one thing, so it's not necessarily true that logic validates logic. It's deduction, inference. So it starts with observance. So it's three components there. Constantly in the mode of disposition, fight or flee, our biology with the motivational tools of instinct, pleasure, and pain direct us towards perpetuity of the DNA mechanism fortuitously. There is no option of opting out of life without often much anguish. There are no off switches, so to speak. We are not allowed to be free from pain by the very inevitable fact that if we do not obey pain and pleasure, our bodies will decay and die. This is an obscene imposition to say that humans or non-human animals must move and seek water, food, shelter, companions will suffer the consequences. Who on earth has the right to tell me I have to live because my intuition insists upon it, with incessant plights against my conscious welfare? Who thought it a good idea? And again, nature didn't think, developed incrementally. If I was to make a computer be conscious with these armaments against the neutral state, relative stillness under non-action, I would be equivocal, indistinguishable to a cruel, callous monster. To even bother to have to think of ending one's own life is a crime in the field, vision and pretense of logic. What gives anyone the justification to force someone into a life pit not yet lived to fruition? Have they even died yet? Most people who are alive, or all people who are alive today, don't even get past 100-some years. And that's kind of insane that most people are kind of amateurs who are having kids. Or all of them are pretty much amateurs. No one lives past, very long past 100 years, I would say. Sorry, I'm going to flip the table. Bear with me. Some ASMR with your tornadoes. So yeah, most people are, pretty much everyone hasn't even lived past 100-some years. I mean, okay, some people live 100+ years, but there's no like 1,000-year-old human, so pretty much all of us are amateurs at this life game, yet we endorse it. Life is too fragile, and to be harmed, too precious. I will not push and move another into this world, and I full well that certain doom that awaits us all. I will not lie and pretend the other people doing the reversal are fair and decent. I will speak up and say stop. Without deprivation, not having would equal no satisfaction. Take the hypothetical of someone experiencing 1,000 years bliss, and then that's suddenly taken away from them. What would that feel like? We must be harassed to enjoy, and we enjoy only to become harassed again. To those with fewer and fewer addictions fading in and or out of life and their habits, life becomes much more tiresome, tedious, mundane, and monotonous, if not severely painful moment to moment. This is a game, routine of our behaviors and renditions of doing over and over that creates a main, colossal, and numerous like growths. The more we have ironically, the less happy we are, in the long run, will be. The less we have appreciation and no returns. So why do the chase? Why go after the going after? It's another sport like tic-tac-toe, losing a pill extraordinarily fast on the set date. Pinprick, I imagine, will equal much more distracting, clearer perspective well-being equals to non-trivial severe harm. One ought to admit when procreating that they are rolling dice. That is to say, we cannot know all the transgressions the person of creation will live, since we only get to live the one life we are given and have not even died yet necessarily. We can play God, but we are not God. That is to say, we have limited and are finite control. Bad will happen necessarily according to statistical data, and foreign influences will affect us, desired or not. If you admit that there is a necessary uncertainty whether your kid will hate you and wish they were never born, you should acknowledge it. Less out of fear and guilt, though, and ideally out of genuine pride, integrity, and character of doing what is right. Being honest and having humility in your abilities, do you then admit the gross negligence it would take to perform the act of childbearing in complete ignorance of these facts? If so, then, at least in darkness some worthy of praise. What is good? These are conditional and are ideal facts within our context, micro-macro consciousness experiences. Rightness is essentially the best outcome of any situation to do good. Goodness is the quintessential relief under prevention of harm, so that is a conditional to harm, felt or not. Considering all environments and persons and creatures dubious or not, there is a right answer, though that answer will or not haunt us to no end. So instead, I believe the pragmatic, utilitarian approach should be to focus on the here and now, our own capacities and capabilities for good, rather than worry and fret over every detail, nook and cranny, and the effects or reverberations doled out of our labors. My duty to you is providing information and not just conjecture. This is not something that is happening over there somewhere. Every day, there are direct consequences to all your decisions. The what-if situation is not just in my head, because I am an obvious ramification of the system people agree to endorse. I am a victim of a system that promotes might over grace or advantage over logic. So I want to ask anyone who's reading whether they would get away with it. They could, if they truly understood what I am saying here. Would you? Life involves serious, not a joke kind of casual pain and torment. As relative. The lives you create, you will never have to live. But everything that befalls one is on you. Remember that. What equals required for an insect to navigate and successfully generate offspring? When I think about it, since nature does not have a blueprint when evolving, we're incrementally developed, so unlike a computer that will perform duties automatically, that fact equals because it was intelligently designed in advance. And biology equals a blind process. Insects, I believe, have primitive consciousness. The only question, I think, equals how far does this go? Say the further down you go from mites, bacteria, the simple nature of their mechanics to navigate require less and less, so I don't think they necessarily require consciousness to behave the way they behave. The most obvious sentient bugs to me would equal bees and cockroaches, or of the like, because of their complex navigation and reaction to their environment. Since we are not programmed with duties innately without motivation beyond sheer chemical repulsion and attraction, I believe pain and pleasure, punishment and reward are necessary, however chromatic. Notice now that crudeness, simplicity, and grossness are not terms for insignificance. A moth will or will not feel greater under lesser sensations than a human. Although, I think it's dependent on how effective that is for the replication of DNA. So if something's just in pain all the time, I don't think that would be good enough. So if all we have is pain to motivate us and not the relief of pain, we probably wouldn't do anything because we just give up because we wouldn't see any point in moving or doing anything because we couldn't get any relief. seems obvious to me that insects could be conscious just based on their, the little features they have. Like they have eyes. Mosquitoes know to come to bodies because of warmth. I don't know. To me, it's just like wasps are a good example of how they fly around and know how to go to places and build nests. And obviously nature doesn't have the advantage of being able to tell the wasp what to do without consciousness. It's definitely probably because of consciousness. I think like any good philosopher, you must be willing to attack your own beliefs. Rigorously and painstaking detail to find any flaw, with the ideal to find truth and strengthen your mental feet. As well, the following script contains some of my earlier attempts at defeating the value arguments containing consciousness as the source of Adam's premise. I believe this succeeds at uncovering technical aspects I had not thought about. However, the original point is still valid, because consciousness is a context we cannot escape unless it is entirely relevant ethically, regardless of the vast known and different universe. It's indifferent to us. It's irrelevant to our own context. Premises for value being beyond mere illusion must be argued to claim the preceding statements. 1. Value is invisible until you sample it, Xerox experience it by your own brain. Cannot be observed otherwise, microscope looking in on consciousness. 2. Value is a real event, something not nothing synthesized by the brain. 3. The prior statements are both claimed and are true. One cannot further access or legitimize their truth. It is no longer an assertion that can be proven right or wrong with absolute certainty. Value has been isolated to its own field. So I think if you want to say value is a real event that can be examined further, I think it must be observable beyond a direct experience, as a thing like all other things in the universe. That was my original argument, but like I said, consciousness being a context we can't escape. I think that pretty much is good enough. And then the argument simply just changes from value kernels to, pain not being done for the sake of it, and how our desires actually don't accomplish anything, and how pain is inherently repulsive. That's more of an argumentation, I believe. The worst thing about childhood and adolescence is an issue of rights. I look back on the past and think how fortunate I was that I could develop according to and for my own interests. Depending on your family and upbringing, you will or will not be shoved through the system. And as kids, they're not even allowed to refuse treatment. People will force you to live and how to live. There is no better time than as a kid to raise a middle finger. I think that sends a message to parents and adults that they can't do whatever they want. Kid who says fuck you and jumps off a bridge, as I see it, will or will not have been a brilliant person, but obviously I'm not going to encourage you to do that thing, because I do think it's something someone has to decide for themselves. I don't think it's something that we should decide for other people, since we can't even be asked to be brought here in the first place. We were forced to be brought here, so a right to die, I think, should at the very least be a standard. Point is, people will take advantage of you if they can. Very few people are pure of heart. Even considering myself, they will raise you to be what they want, and unless you stand up to scream, you will or not ever know otherwise. Logic equals pattern recognition, maneuvering software. A, then B, then A to B. Thinking, feeling, speaking, and doing. Life is this simple. Concept focuses to retrain your brain. You're at square one of the whole chasm of your being. What is the simplest thing? A. Step 2. B. Step 3. A to B. So observance, deduction, and inference. Believe it or not, this is the most fundamental mechanic in reality. Having a bleak outlook on life is not enough. If anything, my own views are incredibly positive because they are more an opportunity than a sentencing and damnation. The very fact that we have the capacity to know the truth is a positive. The fact that we have the capability to think logically is a positive. The only negative can result from a mind incapable or erratic with truth. It is your duty to think logically and be honest with yourself wherever uncertainty lies. Straight paths, not curves, are the most effective route to change. A to B, then next sequence. So on and so forth. I think the statement the world was better off that it was born equals a profound one. I believe so many of us simply mitigate our damages and others do not necessarily. This is the dark truth in life, I believe. We equals your/my outcome in all of this. Was I a blight or misgiving, decent, kind, or just kind of washed away? Futility is depressing to the spirit, emotional, mental character. To believe our actions are of no consequence, or even worse, negatively affect the world is horrifying. This is the responsibility begotten, imposed through our genesis. Wanted or not, hated or not, we have to answer, fill in the lines, and fulfill the sentence to/of our logical duty. We wake up, finally. We have yawned, crawled, and trekked out of our first, naively hoping last, pit of suffering and torment. No, ye faint of heart, turn back up into the ass that you were dragged out of. The flames rise to the ceiling and inflame the lungs for this ordeal. We burn and none are getting out unmolested. I think a lot of what people are stuck in when coming to a doomish and or pessimistic philosophical end, that life is a waste and our extinction is preferable, is our guts jolt, either consciously or unconsciously, despite the personal attachment, if any, we had. That is ended. We are slaves to logic, a rebel against the fairy tale tradition that life is inherently special and or good, a denier of replication for the sake of replication, a DNA ride, a janitor here to mop up, still yearning for some joy in it. The good yoke is forthcoming. The insane, stupendous sewage spewed from the vile, pus, bacterial-ridden filth, the suffering humanity causes, and the suffering of life itself. Sentience that has been stacked upon sentience. We use it for our fuel, the very fuel I'm using to dissect this right now. We have ground up and are being ground up once more through the delusion of some purpose in the murky, blood-filled waters, propelling new beings into the future. No wonder we give up so easily. Life and reality are tough. We must live our lives in perversion against life, to find pleasure in ending the cycle of pleasure and pain. Reality is tough. Be as just relentless too, though, in the proper opposing direction. Saying fuck this shit and or giving up if you are capable will only make the failure of having lived that much worse and or prolonged through repeated dooms. I shall work with such passion. Wish it on no one. That being said, if you're here, it's probably better just to do something, because once you're dead, it's basically just, someone else is being born. So might as well use what you have, because there aren't too many of us right now, at least. And you're not going to be able to make an argument once you're dead. And there aren't too many of us around currently to make arguments, so the ones who can should probably stand up and do that. That which equals worse for the subject personally. A hell which tests integrity of an individual to the unremitting point equivocal by psychological breakdown to their smallest parts. Suffering of the worst kind is experienced when the subject simultaneously does not know how to deal with and cannot change a situation. Then they equal changed, damaged. I used to say, growing up is the same as becoming handicapped. But now I see that adaptation to circumstance is a simulation of character. So through a lot of this, I used some of the Mendham's ideas, and I read them through my book, and talked about whatever I wanted to talk about. It's since been updated since Amanda's video. So. You're already hurt. You're already here. We're already fucked. What's to give up on? What's so damn important otherwise? Face the truth. Accept uncertainty. Be honest, humble, seek, question, learn, think for yourself. Or live in deception and delusion. Can't escape life while you're still alive. So what are we doing? What's so damn important? Pain. We're already hurt. Get something from it. If you suffer, suffer proudly. Focus on the practical and do what you can. Don't give up for an ideal. Every movement in relative positive direction is still comparatively good. One must acclimate step by step. So then, the key here for progress is never to stop taking them. That's pretty much it for now. Legal disclaimer, I do not advocate for people to take their lives. That equals a personal decision. Take care of yourself, please. I advocate for people to think for themselves and listen only to their highest mental processes of impeccable rationality. This is the ultimate conclusion. The least amount of destruction and pain necessary, efficient and/or ethical way feasible, reduce and prevent denying procreation and preventing it, harm wherever wasted, producing an optimum positive net outcome. Blood harm footprint impacts in the world through thy known individual capacity, strengths, efforts, and achievements. Think today in self-honesty and speak in public humility. Admit uncertainty and seek no less than full truth. Thank you. My name is Josiah Skipper. Thank you.